What's up, everybody? My name is Shannon and I am still waiting for my Satyr, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about some books that could be read as standalones even though they're part of a series. I get this question all the time on random videos, like, could you read this book by itself? And normally the answer is no, but I do always stop and think about it, and I'm like, could you actually read this book out of the context within its series? And what I've basically discovered is that the first book in a series, especially a trilogy, oftentimes could work as a standalone. I have picked a couple that I definitely think could stand on its own, and in fact, I'm not super impressed with the rest of the series. I don't think you really need it, that kind of thing. This is definitely not an exhaustive list. I just pulled some kind of off the top of my head, and I would love down in the comments if you wanted to add anything in, if there's some other series that you've checked out and you're just like, hey, the first one's great, but the rest not so good, or maybe the other way around. I would really, really love to hear from that. I'd really love to kind of pull a bigger list together. So right off the bat, we're gonna talk about Miss Leigh Bardugo and her multitude of books. The Grishaverse is so hard to get into, right? There's so many books, there's so many series, they're all connected, but they're all separate, and it's like, how do I go about this? Where do I go? And so here's the thing. In my personal opinion, you do not need the Grisha trilogy at all. Cut it out, you don't need it. You can read Six of Crows, and that's all you need. Six of Crows can stand on its own. You do not need to read Crooked Kingdom after it. You can. The story ends well for some, not so much for others, but I think Six of Crows just works really well on its own. Does it leave off on kind of a cliffhanger? Yes. Is it okay? Yes, I really think Six of Crows just works, it stands, it's got its own legs. Same thing goes for King of Scars. I really do think you could jump in at King of Scars without having read anything else and be totally fine. Do you need Rule of Wolves? No, you 100% do not. I think you could read King of Scars and be totally fine. If you wanted to read both Six of Crows and King of Scars, once again, I just think you'd be totally fine. It's really just cutting down on the repetitiveness, it's cutting down on Leigh Bardugo's Leigh Bardugo-ness, and I think it works fine. The next one we're gonna talk about is Serpent and Dove. I love Serpent and Dove. This book's amazing. I think it's super, super good. I know it gets a lot of hate. I think it works really well. But after reading the second book, I'm a little bit worried about the trajectory of this series. I did give Blood and Honey an A+. But the more I've sat with it, the more I've thought about it. My best friend and I both really love these books. She just reread Blood and Honey again. It's really not standing up super well. I'm starting to think that depending on how the third book goes, you might just throw the rest of the series away. Now, do not quote me on that. We are very close to Gods and Monsters. It might turn everything around. I have no idea. But regardless, even if it goes really well, this book works well as a standalone. The way that it ends in such a way where it's just okay, Reed and Lou have come to an interesting conclusion. I think everything's worked out. You could just read this book over and over and over again and it would be fine. Has its own legs, works well by itself. Another series that is kind of weird, people don't always seem to know where to go, how to get into it, is the Gentleman's Guide or the Ladies' Guide books. There's 3 of these now. I haven't read the last one, but I actually started with the Ladies' Guide to Petticoats and Piracy. This is actually the second book in a series, and it does happen sequentially, but since this is about a different character and it doesn't really lend on the characters from the first book, I read this and I was completely fine. I did not need to read the Gentleman's Guide for this book to make sense, and honestly, I like it more than the Gentleman's Guide. If I was gonna reread them, I would reread this one over and over just because, I identify with it a lot more. That's why I don't have the Gentleman's Guide. I listened to it, I didn't feel a need to buy it, but I do think regardless of where you start, it's gonna be fine. I do think also with the third one, it's probably gonna be the same. So if you wanted to just start with that one and see how you like it, I'm betting just on how these 2 books are presented that one's gonna feel like a standalone as well. When it comes to them though, I do recommend Ladies' Guide. I think they're both great, but as far as where I would enter, this one's my favorite. And the last series that I wanna talk about today is the Graceling series, specifically Graceling and Fire. These 2 books work so well as standalones. They are not about the same thing, they just take place within the same realm. In fact, Fire takes place a long time before Graceling, even though it is the second one. And so in my mind, you could read Fire without reading Graceling and be completely fine. When it comes to these 2 books, I kind of find that you're either a Fire person or you're a Graceling person. I am a Graceling person. I really, really enjoyed this book. It was amazing. It went on such a journey I wasn't expecting. When it came to Fire, it was a little quieter. Like, it wasn't quite the same as Graceling. I wonder if I had read it first, if I would have had like a different feeling about it or something like that. I have some friends who are in love with Fire, like it's their favorite book, it's so super good. So because of that, like you could honestly read either of these books as standalones and be 100% fine. I did say those were the last ones, but I do want to throw in this book that I talk about all the time. You might have heard of it. It's called Life as We Knew It. It is part of a series. You could read that one as a standalone and it's completely fine. You could also read the second one as a standalone and be completely fine. You could honestly read the second one without having read the first one. They're not about the same thing. I think you just might be missing out on like how certain things happened. I can't really remember how in depth it goes into like why things are happening and like that kind of thing. So it's about a different family, it's about a different place, but you can throw the rest of the series away because you don't need it. So those two books definitely stand on their own. But for now, that is just a couple of my recommendations for books that are part of a series that you can read the first one or you can read the second one and like you don't have to commit to it. You don't have to commit to the rest of them because that's kind of where the meat of the story is. They stand on their own, they have their own legs. And like I said, I would really love to hear more ideas from you guys down in the comments below because there are lots of series that just kind of keep going. Or there are ones that have like random ones thrown in the middle where it's just like, okay, like this is kind of different. This kind of stands on its own. Like I would say Tower of Dawn definitely fits that bill because it's different. It's not about the same thing. It's kind of an aside. You could read the whole series without it, or you could read it by itself. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but you definitely could. It would be fine. I'd love to hear more of your ideas down in the comments below. But for now, that is everything I got for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up down below. But I will see you guys next time. Bye.